Hello, Colin Wilson with the Action Network and the Big Bets on Campus. And let's talk about Illinois football in 2024. Brett Bielema has failed to reach 6 wins in 2 of the last 3 seasons. 7 games on the 2023 schedule were decided by a margin of 6 points, very close. And the Fighting Illini finished 5-2 in those games. Will there be regression to that? Quarterback Luke Altmaier returns, but Illinois is going to lean on Caden Fegan. The sophomore struggled to produce explosive runs, logging just 4 rushing attempts over 15 yards and 95 carries. Now, Aaron Henry is going to have an uphill climb as a defensive coordinator here. The 3-3-5 defense that sends blitz on 47% of snaps. The defensive line is a complete rebuild for Illinois. No expectations of creating a top 50 pass rush here. Now, middle linebacker Dylan Rosiak returns as the leading tackler from last year, but also led the team in missed tackles. Illinois is going to be favored in 4 games this season, with Purdue and Michigan State projected within a touchdown. Another 4 games are out of reach for an upset. Kansas, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan. Those are just going to be too much for Illinois. And the win total in the season most likely comes down to Nebraska, Purdue, and Minnesota. Illinois is going to have serious issues stopping the run. That is not good against Nebraska and Minnesota. We're going to go under 5.5 for Illinois, minus 120 for the season, and Brett Bielema to not make a bowl again. Let's talk about the Indiana Hoosiers. Well, the big story is new head coach Curt Cignetti. If you don't know who he is, Google him. He wants you to Google him. He is fresh off of leading James Madison to 19 wins in 2 seasons, just when they started FBS play. Now, the Dukes ran a balanced offensive attack, 52% of snaps running the ball using inside zone. Now they get one of the best, or at least my favorite quarterback from the MAC, and Curtis Rourke transfers in from Ohio, where the Bobcats allowed the quarterback to run a very high successful rate of zone read. That fits what Cignetti wants to do here. Rourke tallied 50 passing touchdowns and just 16 interceptions in 4 seasons with the Ohio Bobcats. And the offensive line returns more than 80% of snaps from a season ago. The portal really helped with that number. This offense should be good to go from day one, and the skill positions are all backfilled from James Madison. Now, the defense projects to have 5 starters come with Cignetti from the pipeline of James Madison, and they were fantastic last year, maybe the best in the nation. Edge Mikael Kamara produced 41 quarterback hurries, 8 sacks for the Dukes, and middle linebacker Aiden Fisher led the team in tackles. Curt Cignetti has never had a losing season. He made sure to tell us at Big Ten Media Days being picked next to last was really weird for him. It is a great situational spot on this schedule against Ohio State on November 23rd. That's right before the Buckeyes go to the big game the following week. Indiana's going to be heavy favorites in 3 non-conference games, and they're projecting as a short favorite in 3 conference home games against Purdue, Nebraska, and Maryland. That equals 6 wins. Now they're going to be short road underdog spots against UCLA and Northwestern. They absolutely could win there. There is potential and a ceiling for Indiana to get to 8 wins this season. We're going to go over 5.5. Plus 100, plus 110, even up to minus 110. We'll take whatever we got in the market on this juice because we've Googled Curt Cignetti, and we're taking over 5.5 on the Indiana Hoosiers. Let's talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes. The big talk around Kinnick Stadium is offensive coordinator Tim Lester coming in. Kirk Ferentz went and plucked him. He was Western Michigan's head coach for a number of years, spending last year with the Green Bay Packers as an analyst. He was very good in the MAC. Western Michigan had a top 4 offense every single year except for the final season before Lester was gone. Lester's going to use heavy pre-snap motion to confuse second-level defenders. He's going to run offenses around 28 seconds per play, which is a little bit faster than what Iowa is used to. We'll see if that RPO is going to work out for Iowa when you have Cade McNamara coming in from an ACL. And now Brennan Sullivan comes in potentially as a backup or as a starter. He had just 67 yards on designed runs with Northwestern last year and no explosives. So it remains to be seen if Iowa has the pieces on offense. Now, the line has more than 150 starts. They are ready to create holes right away from day one. Running back LaShawn Williams returns as a leading rusher from a season ago. We'll see if this offense can get over 20 points a game, get some more wins in line for Iowa. All right, the defensive coordinator, Phil Parker, he's been terrorizing opponents with the 4-2-5, strict zone coverages, and minimal blitz. Iowa finished top 5 nationally in preventing explosives. Middle linebacker Jay Higgins returns with an electric 96 tackles and 54 stops. Now, from a scheduling perspective, Iowa State, Ohio State, and Washington are really the games that present the biggest roadblock to a repeat 10-win season for the Iowa Hawkeyes. The Hawkeyes will receive a bye week before they travel to Columbus. They receive another bye week before the final 2 games of the season. This is a great schedule for Iowa. They have a full month of September just to get that RPO working with Tim Lester, Cade McNamara, and maybe Brendan Sullivan. Let's go to the conference win total. We project Iowa at 6.2. We will go over 5.5 Big Ten wins at plus 160. Let's talk about the Maryland Terrapins. Mike Locksley lost the best player that Maryland has had in a decade with Talia Tagovailoa. His college clock finally expired. It is time to find a new replacement at quarterback. Billy Edwards is going to try to win the position against MJ Morris, who transfers in from NC State. Now, Morris has more turnover-worthy plays than big-time throws in his career, while Edwards completed just 6 of 20 for the Terrapins in the bowl game against Auburn. This could be a struggling offense underneath center. Roman Hemby at running back does return 3.8 yards after contact, and he increased his explosive play rate from 8% to 14% last year. The receivers lose Jayshon Jones, and 6 of the 8 targets are gone. Ranking top 20 in limiting explosives in both standard and passing downs was the defense's calling card. The strength on this side of the ball is the front of the 3-3-5 defense, and linebacker Ruben Hippolyte generated 66 tackles last season. Now, corner Jalen Husky brings 5 PBUs back and 4 interceptions. He transfers in from Bowling Green with those numbers. The key to this schedule is the number of rush-heavy opponents that are going to go against the Terps' very green defensive front. Maryland is comfortably favored in 4 games. Minnesota, Rutgers, Indiana are the coin toss games here on the season. Those teams do have a little bit of a running attack in them. It's going to be a problem for the Maryland Terrapins. We're going to go under 6.5, minus 125 on the juice. Good luck. Let's talk about Michigan State. Jonathan Smith probably has bigger than a year 0 rebuild here in East Lansing, but he does bring in Brian Lindgren, and he gets Joe Rossi's defensive coordinator coming over from Minnesota. At least some recent Big Ten ties coming in. Aiden Childs follows from Oregon State, follows Smith in to Michigan State. He had 35 passing attempts last season, but is easily the most talented quarterback on this roster when fall camp breaks and they start to compete for the positions. Now, tight end Jack Vealing also transfers in from Oregon State. You can expect him to be a big part of this offense. Wideout Monterey Foster returns after 73 targets last year, but the offensive line, spotty, a lot of new faces. This is a complete rebuild in the trenches on both sides. Even for Rossi and his 3-3-5 that he's bringing from Minnesota, it was a modest 21% blitz rate, plays a lot of quarters coverage, and tries to prevent explosive plays. The back of the defense is really the strength of Michigan State this year. Malik Spencer was third leading tackler on the team covering the slot. Now, they're going to be a comfortable favorite in just 2 games this season, 2 non-conference games against Florida Atlantic and Prairie View. Now, we see the Spartans as a touchdown underdog against Boston College, Indiana, Illinois, and Rutgers. Depth is a serious concern for this roster, but considering what they lost and what came in through the transfer portal, making the November schedule very important. And Michigan State must take all of their winnable 6 games on this schedule to get over the win total. Probably not going to happen in what is a year 0 situation for Jonathan Smith. Michigan State under 5, minus 115 in the market. That is a preview for Michigan State. Let's talk about the reigning defending national champions, Michigan Wolverines. Sharon Moore has a ton of work ahead of him here with the offense that he ran to a national championship last year. Gone are the biggest pieces with the exception of running back Donovan Edwards. They are looking for a signal caller at quarterback. 7th-year quarterback Jack Tuttle is going to try to win the position. Also, dual threat Alex Orji is in the mix to get some snaps here, but Orji cannot pass downfield, and Tuttle is limited in what his ceiling is as a passer. It should be a very one-dimensional Michigan offense with plenty of running plays in between the tackles. We're going to see Sharon Moore flash more of that offensive rush game that he had last year with Blake Corum, although Blake Corum also departs. Now, there are 3 seniors on this offensive line. Wide receiver Tyler Morris had 13 catches, and Samaj Morgan only had 22. They are limited in experience at the skill positions, especially on the outside. We'll see what this Michigan offense can do. It looks like fullback dive, zone read, and counter is about one of their strong points, which may actually work on a schedule that includes Texas. Now, on the defensive side, Wink Martindale comes in from the NFL. Heavy, aggressive blitz. This is the same system that has been run in recent years by Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald. Wink Martindale falls out of that Ravens coaching tree, the mastermind of it. Was at the Giants last year, but we expect him to come in, run the exact same systems with a little bit more blitz. Defensive tackle Mason Graham is there. Defensive tackle Kenneth Grant and edge Derek Moore are all there to try to create as much havoc as possible for a Michigan defense that seems to bring it every single year. Now, we like Michigan this year. We think that the love is gone. We think the hate has gone against them, and there is room to love them. They are all the way down to 8.5 in some places in the market. But we like Michigan to go over 9 wins this season at plus money. They're still live in games against Texas, who has a soft defensive interior. They had no problems with the Ohio State defensive interior last year. Let's see what Michigan can do this year. We're going over 9 at plus money. Good luck. Let's talk about the Minnesota Gophers. PJ Fleck had his worst season as a head coach in Minneapolis last season. He won just 5 regular season games, but still made a bowl thanks to his APR ranking. One of the smartest teams, only won 5, still made it there. New Hampshire quarterback Max Brosmer arrives with the departure of Ethan Kaliak-Manis to Rutgers. Now, Brosmer led the FCS in passing yards last year, throwing for nearly 3,500 yards with 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, but 10% of those passes were less than 20 yards. This is not a deep shot quarterback. Will Fleck come off of a rush rate of 61%, including the fact that he has 4 offensive linemen there for his new quarterback who does like to throw a lot? Darius Taylor is in the fold at running back. We'll see what kind of offense this is going to be for Minnesota. Now, Corey Heatherman's going to take over defensive coordinator. He gained notoriety as the defensive coordinator for James Madison, but spent the previous 2 seasons as the linebacker coach for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Now, the 3-3-5 personnel is going to be there, a minimal 21% blitz. It's going to remove a lot of the complexities that Joe Rossi had in this defense at Minnesota. Should be a simplified version of the playbook for the defenders. The good news for Minnesota, the schedule has 2 games off bye weeks over the last 5 weeks of the season. The Gophers should be fresh during the stretch. Comfortably favored over Rhode Island and Nevada, but a number of coin flip games come in the toughest parts of this schedule. UCLA, Illinois, Rutgers, Wisconsin, they're all underdog games. Minnesota would have a puncher's chance, but all of those games come on the road. Fleck is well below 500 against the spread in conference play over the last 2 seasons. Let's look at Fleck, potentially 5 wins, maybe not a bowl again, but we're going to go under 5.5 on Minnesota. That is out there at minus 120. Good luck. Let's discuss the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Matt Rule is going to start his second year here. And if we know anything about Matt Rule, it's that in the second year, he sees a huge jump in his teams from Temple and Baylor. Previous stops for Matt Rule before, he gave them each a combined 10 additional wins in the second season. Now, there is a power rating boost here from second order win total, a regression from a huge turnover margin of minus 17 last year. Pretty much says that these are up indicators for the Cornhuskers. Now, no team lost more interceptions and fumbles than Nebraska in 2023. Dylan Raiola comes in at quarterback, highly touted, is kind of flashing his inner Patrick Mahomes in his dress and his throwing and everything while he's getting ready for fall camp here up in Lincoln. The biggest issue for Nebraska was a rank of 132nd in havoc allowed. That is a collection of tackles for loss allowed, sacks, tackles behind the line of scrimmage, everything that could be bad for your offense. They were near dead last. Now, the line is going to return almost every single player in the 2-deep depth chart, but it has to get better at run and pass blocking for the Cornhusker offense to operate here. Now, Marcus Satterfield comes in as the offensive coordinator. He struggled to implement the pro-style offense last season and also had his previous stop at South Carolina, but now he has a quarterback capable of executing those explosive plays. We'll see if that changes for the Cornhuskers. Now, we love Tony White as defensive coordinator on this defense. 70% of pressures return, pass breakups return over 70% in this 3-3-5. They rank top 25 in numerous categories: success rate, havoc, finishing drives. This was a really good Nebraska defense last year. Nose tackle Nash Hutmacher and his 23 pressures come back from the interior. Outside linebacker Isaiah Gifford spent at least 140 snaps in the box, covering the slot or as a safety, creating 8 passes defense last year. There are games away from Memorial Stadium that are really going to determine this season. They have back-to-back travel at Indiana, back-to-back travel at Ohio State. November sees games at Iowa and USC. In conference play, the Huskers project to win no more than 3 games. Nebraska projects as an underdog in their final 5 games. The winnables come against Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, and Indiana. We don't see them getting to 5 in the conference in the Big Ten. Conference win total under 4.5, minus 115 is the play on Nebraska and what actually should be a rebound year for Matt Rule. Let's talk about Northwestern football. What a turnaround for David Braun, coming in as an interim defensive coach from FCS North Dakota State. Ends up being interim head coach, takes a win total of 2.5 or 3 and gets them to bowl season. It was quite an amazing run. 8 wins that included a Las Vegas Bowl victory over Utah. Now, the Jackrabbits are going to be a big talk here with Northwestern on offense. David Braun went back to the FCS ranks to FCS national champion South Dakota State and got their mastermind of their offense, Zach Lujan. 2-time defending champions in the FCS. The Jacks ran more 12 personnel than any other grouping. They leverage plenty of outside zone and a lot of power run concepts. Cam Porter is in for a big fantasy season if you like college fantasy football. Now, quarterback Brennan Sullivan hit the portal, and he's now going to be in the Iowa backfield. Former Vanderbilt quarterback Mike Wright is here, and he's expected to inherit starting duties. He has more than 1,300 career rushing yards, but he's really struggled with limitations with passing the ball. Wright has posted 15 big-time throws to 32 turnover-worthy plays in his time with the Commodores and last season at Mississippi State. Now, on defense, Northwestern slipped inside the top 60 in quality and finishing drives. It was hard to get something past the 50. It was hard to have a 10-plus play drive, and it was even harder to get points up on the board when you got into scoring position against this defense. Northwestern finished top 50 in stopping the rush and pass explosives. Now the defense returns more than 70% of pressures, and a big part of that is Carmine Bastone and Richie Haggerty on the defensive line. As for the schedule, they're favored in 5 games. Eastern Illinois is the most comfortable margin of victory for the Wildcats here. They're going to be favored over Miami of Ohio. They'll be favored over Duke. And Illinois and Indiana are also coin flip games. Northwestern projected at 4.5 wins this season. We're going to go over minus 120 on the 4.5 for Northwestern and David Braun's second season as head coach. Let's talk about Ohio State. Ohio State has one of the most talented offensive rosters in the nation, now led by one of the smartest offensive masterminds in all of college football in Chip Kelly, who leaves his head coaching position in UCLA to take the coordinator position here to get this offense going. Now, Will Howard transfers in from Kansas State. If you're unfamiliar with Kansas State, they like multiple backs in the backfield, and they needed Will Howard to run a ton of RPO. You're going to see him do that this year with running back transfer Quinshon Judkins coming in from Ole Miss. Running back Trevion Henderson is still there. You can expect to see those three trying to create a ton of explosive plays on the ground. Now, they can still get it done on the outside with wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, but Will Howard had a terrible spring game, and it shows in his numbers from Kansas State that on passes that are over 10 yards, he has just as many turnover-worthy plays that he does big-time throws. It remains to be seen if Will Howard is the answer to explosive plays in the air for this offense. If not, you'll find out why Julian Sayin had his Heisman numbers nearly cut in half this summer. Will the offensive line execute better in run and pass blocking? In comes center Seth McLaughlin from Alabama. This is the same center that had problems snapping the ball to Jalen Milroe, which cost Alabama the Rose Bowl in the very final play of the game. That wasn't the first time Seth McLaughlin had problems snapping the ball. Now, that happened in pistol and shotgun formations at Alabama. Chip Kelly runs 90% pistol and shotgun, which he will at Ohio State. Keep your eyes on center here for the Buckeyes. Now, defensively, Jim Knowles should still be as stout as any other defense in the conference. 4-2-5 defense, disruptive defensive tackles. Burke, Downs, they're all Americans here. They return. And we're going to see Ohio State be just as good with a senior-dominated front seven. We'll see if that turns into extra victories here. Now, the number for them to make the college football playoff is completely out of control. I mean, minus 750. The highest number that you should bet on Ohio State to make the college football playoff is minus 250 when you look at their win total and their odds to win this conference. They are priced, twice as much as Oregon with a projected win total the same, and they have to go and visit Oregon this season, which could potentially be a loss. Look out Ohio State. They've kind of got a tricky spot against Indiana. Also, the final game against Michigan looms. They do not want a 4th consecutive loss to the Wolverines in the game. Because the price is so outrageous, because we have a quarterback that might not be able to get the ball down the field, and because there might not be just that much continuity on this team, we're going to say Ohio State does not make the playoff at plus 450 out there in the market. Take it down to plus 350. Ohio State goes 9-3. There's a potential this team is not going to the college football playoff. That's what we will play here against the Buckeyes, plus 450. Good luck. Let's talk about the Oregon Ducks. Is Dan Lanning ready to win the national championship? We certainly think so. He's projected to win 10.8 this season, 7.7 wins out of a 9-game schedule in his first season within the Big Ten. TARP, our transfer activity and our returning production, states that they have enough on both sides of the ball, 71% on offense, 93% on defense. That comes with a mid-FBS average of 63%. Oregon is loaded this year thanks to the transfer of quarterback Dylan Gabriel. They're not going to miss Bo Nix very much. Gabriel's coming in to wear number 8 right after his mentor, Marcus Mariota, who won a Heisman for the Ducks. Lanning has been building the trench on both sides of the ball for years, just like his predecessor, Mario Cristobal. No team from the West Coast is ready to come in and bang in the trench like Oregon is this year. Now, running back Jordan James is back. He was a huge weapon in the red zone last year. And then wide receiver Tez Johnson is back on the outside. Tight end Terrence Ferguson is at tight end. They have some of the most electric skill position players in this entire conference. The offensive line is going to be anchored by a Johnny Cornelius. And then when you flip over to the defensive side of the ball, we expect them to be as good as last year. Defensive back Kobe Savage comes in from Kansas State, a big pickup for that secondary. So Oregon defense had 34 sacks last year. We expect them to capitalize on that with linebacker Jeffrey Bassa, defensive lineman Jordan Birch. Now the portal fills up the secondary. Linebackers may be the best in the Big Ten. The defensive interior was wiped, but Houston transfer Jamari Caldwell comes in. How much do we like Oregon? They're going to host Ohio State on this schedule. Outside of that, they shouldn't lose a single game. Oregon should be in the Big Ten championship. They should compete for the national championship. All the numbers on the board have no value left. Oregon has been a hot team in the market for people to buy. To make the playoff is at minus 300. I'm not exactly sure that doesn't still have value. But for our best bet of the season on Oregon, we're going to take them to win the Big Ten at any number better than 2-1. Good luck on Oregon and their first season inside the Big Ten. Let's talk about Penn State. Well, maybe nobody's happier than James Franklin about the dissolving of the divisions inside the Big Ten. The East schedule is gone, which means Michigan is no longer on the schedule. Penn State is going to be comfortably favored in 10 games this season. We project them at 10.7 wins with 8 wins in conference play. That one loss could be coming to Ohio State. Now, when you look at this, they have plenty coming back per TARP, transfer activity, and returning production. 79% on the offensive side of the ball, 85% on the defensive side of the ball. James Franklin hit the sweepstakes when it comes to coordinators, starting off with Andy Kotelnicki that comes in from Kansas. What are you going to see for quarterback Drew Allar? Lots of pre-snap motion, lots of reverse, counter, jet sweeps, things to get the defense to indicate what they're running as far as coverage, linebackers, and blitzes. That's how Penn State works on offense. They like to try to get the defense to tip what they're going to do, and Kotelnicki is the best at that. Now, running back Katron Allen is still there. Nick Singleton is still there. Both had completely subpar years versus what they were as a Rose Bowl team in 2022. We'll see if they can return to form. Now, Abdul Carter was kind of in the linebacker mix and the edge mix. He's going to be the biggest piece on the defense that lost some key players in the secondary. Offensively, they've got to replace plenty of wide receivers and 3 offensive linemen, but Drew Allar does have the arm to throw deep. He wasn't allowed to until late in the season. Kotelnicki should have this offense going. Defensive end Danny Dennis Sutton and defensive edge Abdul Carter, who moved in from linebacker, are going to be the best players on this defense. Tom Allen was one of the best defensive coordinators in the nation before taking over Indiana and was great with defense there. Expect Penn State to have the 2 best coordinators in the nation with Kotelnicki and Allen. Drew Allar, if he can grasp this playbook of Kotelnicki, Penn State's absolutely going to win those 10 games where they're favored by double digits on this schedule. A 10-2 team out of the Big Ten is going to make the playoff. The best bet for the Penn State Nittany Lions this season to make the college football playoff, minus 140. I don't see how you can't with how much we love the offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, and defensive coordinator, Tom Allen. Let's talk about the Purdue Boilermakers. Purdue comes in this season. Second-year head coach Ryan Walters still has Graham Harrell, offensive coordinator. Kevin Kane is his DC, but project only at 3.6 wins, trying to rebound from a bowl-less season last year. Hudson Card is still here on offense playing quarterback. Running back Devin Mockabee returns one of his best weapons. He's a former walk-on. And then Reggie Love III transfers in from Illinois. But we have to ask, is there going to be more 12 personnel under Graham Harrell? The word from the Big Ten Media Day is that maybe Hudson Card hadn't fully grasped what this offense is, and he may need some more weapons and some more assists. At least he needs a clean pocket. Now, this is his 5th season. He has an outstanding 15-8 touchdown to interception ratio from last year. But the former Texas signal caller nearly tripled a turnover-worthy play rate last year, suffering plenty of mistakes, not as many big-time throws. Pressure was a big part of that. Now, the offensive line is deeper and bigger. Transfers from Ball State, New Mexico. But the question around center comes at Gus Hartwig, and the question if he is really a Big Ten center. Now, wide receiver C.J. Smith comes in from Georgia. He's going to be a burner, should be a big target for Graham Harrell's air raid offense. Now, on the defensive side, there's just a ridiculous amount of portal activity that took away Huge talent off this Purdue defense. They lost defensive end Nick Skirton to Texas A&M, probably the most sought-after edge rusher in all of the portal this offseason. Now, the defense didn't really grasp Ryan Walters' D in year one. It is a complex scheme. We'll see if they can pick it up in year two. Safety Dylan Thieneman, best in Purdue history per FWAA as a freshman All-American. We'll see if he can repeat that. He is very important to this defense. He had 106 tackles and 8 passes defense just a season ago. Now, our Action Network power ratings have Purdue as a favorite in a single game, and that's the opener against Indiana State. Nebraska and Michigan State are projected as a pick, and then the Boilermakers are going to be short underdogs to Northwestern, Illinois, and Indiana. There is just not an easy path in the Big Ten here. We're going to go to the conference win total under 2.5. It's at plus money, plus 130. Conference win total under 2.5 for Purdue in 2024. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights, a huge surprise for Greg Schiano last year. It all came together, culminating with a big bowl victory for all of his kids from the State College of New Jersey. Rutgers finished with one of the highest rush rates in the nation at 63% on offense, finding the highest rate of success with inside zone and man run concepts. Now, running back Kyle Monangai is going to return behind a very experienced offensive line. He's going to look to build upon 3.6 yards after contact and 73 missed tackles forced. Gavin Wimsatt was their quarterback. He transfers out to Kentucky. In comes Minnesota quarterback transfer Ethan Kaliak-Manis. A 4.2% turnover-worthy play rate. Might have been a little bit in over his head at such a young age with the playbook from Minnesota. Now he's going to benefit from a better offensive line. Considering the Gophers last year, he had 112 pressures and just 295 dropbacks. He was constantly under the gun in a pocket. Now he should have a clean one with Rutgers. Defensively, the nickel package has a moderate 30% blitz rate, 35% in man coverage, which is pretty high in college football. The strength of the defense is the secondary, despite the loss of Max Melton at corner. Less than 70% of pressures and tackles return to the front seven. Linebackers Desmond Igbenson and Mohamed Torre bring the havoc on this defense. Rutgers will cruise in opening games against Howard and Akron before having their first bye week of the season. Now, Rutgers will play 8 games, all projected within 6 points. It seems like there's going to be a lot of coin flips here, but the advantage is in a November 9th game at home, coming off of a bye week, facing a Minnesota team off back-to-back travel. Oh, also, this is a revenge game for their quarterback and their offensive coordinator against Minnesota. Now, the final 4 games could produce a sweep for Rutgers. Lots of good plus money juice spots here. We're going to take over 6.5 on Rutgers, one of the hot teams. We expect to continue it in the Big Ten. That's at plus money right now. Over 6.5 plus 120 for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Good luck. And let's talk about the UCLA Bruins joining the Big Ten in 2024. Quite the change on the coaching staff for the Bruins over the offseason. Chip Kelly has elected to leave his head coaching post, go to Ohio State, and serve as the offensive coordinator. That left Deshaun Foster on the offensive staff to rise as the next head coach, tapping Eric Bieniemy from the Washington Commanders and, more famously, the Kansas City Chiefs as the new offensive coordinator of UCLA. Now, the running game we expect to be heavy on with Foster and Bieniemy in charge, but do they actually have the piece that they need to be electric on the ground? TJ Harden returns after 800 rushing yard campaign, but he had very poor numbers in yards after contact and created missed tackles. We don't know if there's going to be the juice in this running game for UCLA, and that is going to be what they primarily go to when the best weapons on this offense are under center and out wide. That comes in quarterback Ethan Garbers, his top returning target, and J. Michael Sturdivant. Now, home run hitting wide receiver had 70 targets a year ago. He caught 36 balls with an average depth of target at 16 yards. He is a home run hitter. Now, the defense is going to be led by former defensive line coach, now defensive coordinator, Ika Malo. He's promoted from within. The nickel defense flashed multiple defensive fronts last year using a lot of cover one and quarters, and that was under D'Anton Lynn, who moved over to USC. We expect the UCLA defense to stay the same. It was one of the more aggressive defenses in the nation last year with a very high 42% blitz, but you can get away with that with the edge talent that UCLA had last year with Laiatu Latu. They don't have that anymore. They only returned 40% of their tackles and pressures that return to this roster. Now, leaving Southern California for Hawaii, LSU, Penn State, Rutgers, Nebraska, all in separate weeks. There's a lot of air miles coming for this UCLA team. They're going to be hard pressed to get victory against Oregon, Penn State, and LSU on this schedule. Now, week 1 against Hawaii, that is where the best bet is against UCLA in a fade. Hawaii has stated they're going to play Delaware State in week 0, and they're not going to flash anything. But in week one, they will be primed with that run and shoot offense of Timmy Chang going up against a very suspect secondary of UCLA. Right now, I make the point spread about 12. You can get Hawaii plus 13.5 in the market at home against UCLA in their first game when they're going to try to establish dominance on the ground. We'll see how that works out. Hawaii plus 13.5 against UCLA in week one is the fade on UCLA for 2024. Let's talk about the USC Trojans. No one expects this offense to take a dip with the departure of Caleb Williams to the NFL. Despite Miller Moss potentially being the quarterback or a transfer from UNLV, the offense will be in good hands. Miller Moss had 372 passing yards in the Holiday Bowl with 6 TDs. Now, Jaden Maeva comes in from UNLV. He ran the go-go, but nobody expects this USC offense to fall off, especially when you have Zachariah Branch, Jacoby Lane, two of the most explosive players in the conference, maybe in the nation. Deuce Robinson is also in there looking for quality reps, but this offense is not going to fall back at all with Caleb Williams. The defense is actually where all of the interesting information has been in the offseason. Lincoln Riley decided to go across Southern California and get Danton Lynn from UCLA staff. Quite amazing what happened to USC in the bowl game after missing nearly 140 tackles on the season. They only missed 6 in the bowl game against Louisville. Although Danton Lynn was not on staff for the bowl game, he was assisting during practices. And that kind of shows what he did with the UCLA defense, improving their tackle inside a top 50 rate. Now, UCLA moved from 87th to 11th in total defense under Danton Lynn. Do we expect that kind of jump out of the USC Trojans this season with Danton Lynn as defensive coordinator? This is an all-star cast of coaches on the defensive side. Matt Entz was the former North Dakota State head coach. He's now a linebacker coach. Former Houston defensive coordinator is now a secondary coach, Doug Belk. There is a lot of smart, sharp minds that have won everywhere that are on this defensive team that should help USC get to the window plenty this year. With no drop off from Caleb Williams and one of the most explosive offensive pieces in college football on this offense, an all-star cast on defense, USC could potentially be a dark horse in the Big Ten this season. We're going to opt for the win total over 7.5. Any number you can get on the Trojans. We expect this to be a much improved defense, and that is going to show on the scoreboard over for USC and their win total. Let's talk about the Washington Huskies. Jedd Fisch comes in as head coach and looking to replicate the success that he had in Arizona. Well, he's going to have a blank chalkboard to do it because there isn't much coming back, but quarterback Will Rogers is there, the second best, highest passer in SEC history with 11,551 yards during his time at Mississippi State using the air raid under Mike Leach. Now he's going to move to a pro style. He's going to do that under Jedd Fisch. He's going to learn a lot more about play action pass and running things not in the air raid. Now, Arizona running back Jonah Coleman is there. The junior has been electric in his college career, averaging 4.4 yards after contact, and he had 19 runs of 15 yards or more. Wideout Jeremiah Hunter arrives after 3 years at Cal. He averaged an explosive 2.3 yards per route run. For everything people have said about everybody, leaving Washington missing so much in the portal, they did inherit a good running back and a good wide receiver that should be able to flash some explosives. The good news for the offensive line, the first dominant defensive trench will not be on this schedule until October 5th against Michigan. Now, on the defense, edge Isaiah Wood brings 30 pressures in from Arizona, and Sebastian Valdez joins from Montana State with 92 pressures in his 3-year career. The defensive line is a complete rebuild. Any competent rushing attack is probably going to have a good day against Washington. Now, I see Washington as a double-digit favorite over the first 4 weeks of the season. Rutgers, Indiana, UCLA, they all favor just on the side of Washington. And then there's coin flips at home against USC. And then once again, there'll be a small underdog to Iowa on the road. Has the hate gone too far on Washington? A win total that opened up 8.5 in some places is now down as far as 6.5 in Jedd Fisch's first year. There is a heavy NFL flavor here with their new defensive coordinator, Steve Belichick. Jedd Fisch, of course, is going to run his style and not mold it around the kids that he has. So there's an argument to be made that the market has gone the right way. It has gone a little bit too far for our numbers. We're going to go over 6.5, minus 110 on Washington with Jedd Fisch. We're believing in Jedd Fisch, who was the Action Network Coach of the Year in 2023. Good luck. Let's talk about the Wisconsin Badgers. Luke Fickell made a radical change at the beginning of last season, hiring Don't Blink Air Raid with Tempo, Phil Longo, offensive coordinator. Definitely not the fit for the geographical situation that Wisconsin is in, who is used to big, beefy running backs and big, beefy offensive linemen. They love tempo now. They love four verts. Didn't really work out last year. Wisconsin was top 25 in protection, havoc allowed. They did not allow anybody into the backfield, but they were also bottom 10 in run explosives and pass explosives, which is just not a staple of the Phil Longo offense. Now, a heavy rusher rate was trimmed to 50%, while the RPO rate at Wisconsin went from 5% to 35%. There was just so many struggles running this offense. Ches Malusi does return at running back, but he just doesn't have a lot of juice. 2.8 yards per route run. And this quarterback battle is going to come between backup Braden Locke and former Miami Signal caller Tyler Van Dyke. And Dyke is expected to win this job. 54 touchdowns and just 23 interceptions during his time in Miami. The fifth-year quarterback has a completion percentage drop of nearly half when he has a crowded pocket. So the way to beat Wisconsin this year is to try to get some pressure. 3 offensive linemen do return. They should be top 10 in havoc allowed once again. But there are no big skill position pieces here for this offense. So the best thing for Tyler Van Dyke is to be as accurate as possible because his targets may not get much separation. Now, defensively, the linebacker is completely backfilled from the portal. The defense is going to excel against the pass once again, but Wisconsin could struggle against run-heavy offenses. Finding 8 wins on the schedule could be problematic when you look at the market win total. The Badgers are going to be more than 2 touchdown underdogs, and it lists 3 home games against Alabama, Penn State, and Oregon. There's going to be road underdog spots of 6 or more against USC and Iowa. Also, Wisconsin, they're just going to be heavy favorites when they're taking on Minnesota, Western Michigan, and South Dakota. Once you get past that, it is really hard to find 8 wins on this schedule. We will go under 7, minus 115 on a Wisconsin Badgers team that we project to only get 6 wins.